I wonder how many people in the world who have money are willing to share half of what they have to make
Mm,
someone else be able to become happy or fed or sustain somebody else, you know.
mhm,
And I had a lot of these moments. And in and around that time, I started reaching out to people about my thoughts of changing and making a difference and reaching a certain point in my life where I could bring about change and I could successfully do that. And I was never scared because I think the history of my successes in education, in work, every time I put my mind and heart into something wholeheartedly, I
mhm,
succeed. So that
mhm,
being the case, I was never scared of, oh my God, I'm sleeping on a subway bench. It didn't bother me actually, because I always knew I'm going to find my route and I'm going to get there and I'm going to be successful and resilient and it's going to happen.
You're listening to Catalyst Talks, conversations with change agents, outliers, superheroes, and truly conscious leaders modeling what it is to be an unstoppable force for good and truth in this world. What lit these catalysts on fire to do their work, and what nuggets of wisdom can they share with a world literally on fire? I'm your host, Stephanie Trager. I'm a transformational catalyst and life coach to maverick change agents in business, leadership, and life. On this podcast, I wear an eclectic mix of hats, including Earthkeeper, Wayfinder, Truth Teller, coach, lawyer, business, and impact strategist. My intention is holding space for higher purpose, peak wellness, soul mastery, and deeper impact so we can live in harmony with ourselves, each other, and nature. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. If you love it, please share and spread the word. We're on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. See the show notes on catalysttalks.com for links, and enjoy this episode. And now a word from our sponsor, and then you'll enjoy this uninterrupted episode. As mission-driven business leaders, entrepreneurs, and evolutionary change agents, you know that speaking can help you generate opportunities, visibility, leads, and growth, and allow you to have more influence, impact, and even more income. And if you've ever considered taking the stage, my friend Trisha Brook is the transformational speaking mentor you want in your corner. As the former executive director of the first TEDx in New York City, TEDx Lincoln Square, and Speakers Who Dare, she has literally supported thousands of thought leaders, including me, in becoming top speakers and influential voices. Trisha has a complimentary masterclass called It's Time to Go from Uncertain to Unstoppable, and I highly recommend. You'll learn how to share your story effectively for impact. Speaking gives you instant credibility, and learning from an award winning director, producer like Trisha, who's worked in film, television, and theater for 3 decades, will catapult you into a new speaking career and platform that you desire. So, like me, Trisha has integrity. She models impeccability, elegance, and maturity in business. So, you can trust her as your mentor. So, head on over to trishabrook.com/unstoppable and start your journey to becoming an unstoppable speaker now. The link is also in the show notes. Welcome back to Catalyst Talks podcast. It's been some time since we last convened, and we've been in a process of reimagining and rebranding and just diving into what the next iteration of this platform is all about and realizing that it is a process of divine timing. But we have had some very important and special conversations on deck that were timely and we know will be thought provoking. So we're continuing right now with Catalyst Talks just to get these conversations out to you and out into the world. And who knows, maybe we'll stay with Catalyst Talks forever. Today, we drop in with a very special guest, Ali Horriyat, and he is someone with a very unique story and a journey that's compelling with an invitation to humanity. I'm really excited to drop in with him today. He left a lucrative, profit driven world of finance to devote himself to global change, where compassion, empathy, and social impact are now at the heart of everything he does. So we are quite aligned, as is his mission with our podcast and everything we're about here. Ali had gave away, and I'm really excited to dive into this with you. He gave away his entire personal fortune to support humans, people, the world, the environment, social causes, and impact. And and people facing mental health issues. And in 2020, he founded Compassivist, an organization created to help spread this vision. So as we dive in today, we're going to probably take a nonlinear tour of everything that you're about, Ali, and I'm really grateful for you giving us your time. It's like the heart of my writing. It's the heart of a book that I've been working on for years, like my talks, and that is that piece about cognitive dissonance. So I want to play a game with cognitive dissonance, and I know we're going to get there, but I also want to really hear about your journey. So if you can take us back, what were you doing 20 years ago? So I want to know what you were doing then, what drives you now, what happened, what sparked that change in between, and what is the mission and what is Compassivist? What are you doing? So that, and I'm pretty sure we'll take a few left turns from there.
So, Stephanie, first of all, thank you for sharing this space with me. 20 years ago. So I'll take you a little further back so you understand the context of 20 years ago. I was born in Dubai, and this was at a time where Dubai didn't have the context it has now. It was a desert starting to really come into itself in the way that it is today. And I did my schooling in Europe and Dubai and in Canada and the US, further education. And 20 years ago, precisely 24 years ago, I had finished my economics degree. I'd come back to Dubai. I did an MBA. And there was a lot of talk in the family about you need to get married and, the traditional Middle Eastern lifestyle. And it's time to get married. You take over, the family business and all these things. And I grew up in Europe. So for me, that whole concept of, semi-arranged marriages and stuff didn't sound too appealing. So I knew my escape was I want to do more education, because at that time in my culture, it was like, oh, my child is getting a master's degree or, doctorate or whatever. And it was really something they approved of. So I went back, and that's where I started, doing my philosophy masters and my political science masters and, my postgraduate in conflict resolution, all these other things that I started doing. And every time my parents would say, well, when are you coming back? Oh, I just got admitted to this other, graduate program, and be proud of me. And I stayed forever. About 17 years ago, I got to a point where I can't just go to school for the rest of my life, and by this point, things have simmered. So I thought I'd get a job. I couldn't get a job because I was overqualified in my education, and I'd never worked a day in my life. So everybody said, well, we can't hire you. And at that point, I thought, okay, you know what? I'll get into some things that I understand. And I understood Forex, trading currencies, because I lived in Europe from Dubai. My family used to come to Europe. We used to go all around traveling. And then it wasn't euro. So when you went to Germany, you had to use a Dutch mark. When you went to France, you had to use a French mark, a French franc, and Swiss franc, and all these different currencies. So I kind of learned from my dad, why there are currencies, why exchange happens, why they fluctuate, and all those things. So I kind of started using that. And this is about 20 years ago. It led me into that small piggyback account. Started with about, I think, 18,000 Canadian dollars. And it grew into the hundreds of thousands. And so my friends started coming to me and saying, hey, what do you do? And I said, this is what I do for myself. And they said, can we leave some money with you and, throw it into what you're doing? And I said, sure. One thing led to another, and it kept growing, word of mouth. People were bringing their grandparents as well, refinancing their homes and putting the money with me. And one day, the regulatory body, kind of like the FCC in the US, knocked on my door and said, you can't do this. You need to be registered. Like, there are laws.
Yeah.
You can't just work out of your personal account and people just, wire in hundreds of thousands of dollars. I said, okay, sorry. So I got licensed. I did all that. I got a lawyer, got everything in check, started a fund. That fund grew. It grew exponentially. At one point, it was the second largest private fund in the country. And there was never a plan for this. This just happened. It happened out of nothing. It happened because Ali didn't want to get married to someone he didn't know, or he didn't, have that relationship and the love and the soulmate aspect of it and such. So fast forward, 2016, that's the moment that you said I gave everything away. And I had reached between 2014 and 2015, I'd reached this point in my life where I was making, for me, a tremendous amount of money. And I realized after a certain point, I couldn't do anything with the excess. There was really no lifestyle change, no addition, no benefit, no happiness that was raising beyond that. And it started getting upsetting that everything I had worked hard for, that I believed getting to that financial, height would make a difference, would make me happier. All these things that I was taught, in a sense, through my experiences and the media and just life around me, and the American dream, the way it's presented. And through certain, catalyst moments, I took a break one day. I went to the airport. I looked at the departures list. All the flights were leaving about 8 hours later, except for one that was to Quito, Ecuador, which was leaving in about 2 hours. And I thought, if I take any of the other 8 hour ones, I'll chicken out. I'll just go back home and go to the office the next day. Let me just go to Quito. And at that point, for some reason, I thought Quito was like it was just under Costa Rica, like maybe a 4 hour flight. Little did I know, it's a day flight south. I get to Quito, that triggers not wanting to go back. And at that point, I still didn't know what the problem was. I still didn't know.
Were you staying in Quito, or did you
Yeah,
travel around and go out
I
to?
at first no, at first I stayed in Quito, and basically it was the old alley. I found the most expensive hotel, booked myself into a suite, and I didn't know anybody there the first few days. Then I went to the people in concierge and reception, and there were a bunch of young guys, and I said, "Hey, what do you guys do, out of work?" And they pulled a map out at first. They're like, "Sir, you can go here and see." I said, "No, I don't want this. What do you do?" And they're like, "Well, we hang out." I said, "Okay, I'm going to hang out with you guys tonight." So I started making friends with them, and I started seeing life from a different perspective. I mean, these were people who had this beautiful space, scenic wise, and they had rivers going by in front of their homes and all this like loveliness happening in nature. And they were happy, and they didn't have everything I had. And my one day's income, would allow me to have this life. Yet I wasn't having this life. I wasn't happy. And I had the capacity to be happy in this setting. And so I started thinking, that's the change that I need. I need to find out what I'm purposed to do, because what I was doing and all the lavishness that it brought and all the experiences that I gained from that lifestyle was merely an accident. I had fallen into it. It wasn't the purpose, and there was no purpose. When I left, I slowly realized that making money in and of itself as an end is not a purpose. It cannot be a purpose because there's no purpose to it. I mean, what do? You think about just stacking up all the cash that you can have and putting it in front of you. Nothing happens with it. Yep. So the purpose becomes however you want to put it. You can buy a Rolls Royce. You can start a nonprofit that can help some people. There's different purposes, but they're all purposes. You need to have a purpose. At one point in my life, I lost purpose because I couldn't buy any more Rolls Royces. It was boring. And I couldn't give to the causes anymore because I wasn't attached to them. I was going to these gala events, giving to nonprofits with acronyms that I didn't understand what they were doing. I used to give $50,000 annually to this one place that I didn't know what they do. It was
Why?
ACH.
What was
Because
inspiring?
the party was really fun. They had a really fun party. They had an annual ball that you got to dress up, and every year was something. 1 year was you had to be an animal. So, it's fun in that lifestyle. It takes you out of your space. You find a designer who makes a costume for you, and that whole thing becomes a lot of fun. And then you go to the event and you meet all the other people. And you're like, oh my God, you're a zebra, haha, and you have a lot of fun. That's why you give the 50,000. It's not because you care. It's not because you know what you're doing or you're attached to the cause. So that became boring. This became boring. I had no purpose. But when I got to Ecuador, I realized something about myself. I realized I'm dominating my spaces with my money. That's where I realized what the problem was. I
Mm,
realized I don't have a purpose, so I make my purpose owning everything with money.
mm,
I moved from there and I started traveling. And I said, I want to travel to places where I can connect with people. So I started doing the old countries like Cairo and Istanbul and places like that. And then I realized the addiction. When I was in Cairo, the Four Seasons here, that hotel there, and those kind of spaces. And I wasn't really going into the world. And I said, okay, two things are happening here. One, I'm addicted to money because I want that lifestyle. I want that privilege. I want all of that. And I want to be involved in things that expand that excess that I'm living in. But inside, a little deeper than that, I don't want any of that. A little deeper
mm.
than that, I really want to make a difference. I really want to have a value added life in the sense that when I die and I look back, I say, that was good. You did well.
Yeah.
That wasn't really poor the way you lived. And so that's the moment that I gave everything away. Because I realized the more I have my, it's kind of like, having a bag of cocaine with you and you're a cocaine addict and you're going everywhere and you're carrying this bag with you. It's just hurting you.
No.
And that's what was happening to me.
Mm. I actually wonder, there's a lot of questions in there. I'm sure a lot of people have different questions. First place my mind goes is, did you pause before giving it away? And what does giving it away mean? But did you pause and do work out any process, say with an advisor or your own process for determining how much you would need, and then you gave away the surplus?
I tried to do that. I had a lawyer that had been with me for a decade. And this lawyer was my trusted everything. Every decision I made, went through that office.
Mm,
And we spoke. And I said, I don't feel good anymore. I feel like, I want to start over. I want a new life. Basically, I want a new life, and I have the money to essentially place myself in a new life. So that's
mhm,
what I'm going to do. And I said, I'm addicted. I keep wanting the money. I keep wanting these things. So I want to really break from it so that I can move. And my lawyer coming from my previous world, oh, Ali, you're just, having one. A lot of my clients go through this. They have a moment, it's an
mhm,
identity crisis, and you just, you need to take some time off and come back, and and everything will be fine. The office is managing. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry. You need to see a doctor. And I said, and I know
mm,
myself. And I said, no, I don't need to see a doctor. I don't need to go on pills. I don't need any of that. I need to change my life. And that's when I realized, and I spoke to one other friend of mine who was also a client. And I went to that friend because that friend was a public figure, very successful person, Forbes list and all of that. And I thought they will give me the right answers because they've been there and self-made as well. And when I went there, they said, hey, you know what? We're going to take a trip to Vegas. We're going to have a really good time. We're going to forget about all this crisis you're going through, and we're going to come back. And then he names his wife and he says, she's got a lot of nice girlfriends. We're going to find you a girlfriend and you're going to settle. And, once you have that settled life, things are going to be okay. You just don't have a settled life. That's why you feel
mhm.
all over the place. You need a home to anchor you. And then I realized nobody's going to understand me. That is when I thought, you either do this or you don't. You either do exactly what your friend and your lawyer were saying, go back there and put on that mask for the rest of your life, or break free of all the chains, every single one of them. And to break free, called my lawyer. I said, let's calculate what it'll cost for me to shut down completely. And I said, if you're just going to sit there and bicker with me, I'm going to fire you and hire another law firm. So do the job. Don't argue with me. At that point, it got to the point where these are the numbers. Okay, X amount is left. I said, okay. And I thought, I want to be daring. I want to do this from scratch, not from a little bit. I don't want to keep $1 million and start over again. So I literally gave away every penny.
What would you care sharing around the ballpark? Some?
A little over $100 million
Mm,
was what I gave away, and I was left with some just under $18,000. Just picking up the
mm,
scraps from here and there. And ironically, I started with just under $18,000 when I
Yeah.
first started my journey from school to opening up that first Forex account. So, it went full circle. And here I am where I should have been then doing what I'm doing now. But
Wow.
I lost that, about 15 years
Where,
finding
well,
myself.
where I might disagree because there's no, I don't know if my just philosophy is that it's all medicine, it's all learning, it's our soul's journey here, right?
Mhm.
What did you do with the money? Did you direct
Um,
it somewhere or was it?
yes. So at that point, I had one of my lawyer's clients was a big media company, and he said, "Ali, if you're going to give this kind of money away, we're going to document it." And so I got lucky because that media company contacted me, and we started talking, and they said, "We want to make a story of it because
Mm,
it's a powerful story." And I thought they want to make a story of giving and finding yourself and finding purpose and all of that. And that was the hours of conversations I had with them.
mm,
And this was about late 2017. And instead, when they gave me the story that was going to go in tabloids like the Daily Mail and other places, it was a list of, the toys that I had, some, celebrity figures that I dated and things like that that were coming out of the woodworks. And I said, we never spoke about this. Like, yeah, these are the things
mm,
we found, which will, kind of bring people into attention and all of that. I said, but why do we need the attention? The idea was to try to show people to go after what they really feel in their heart and not, just follow the dollar. That was the goal of this article. Um, and they said, yeah, but nobody cares about that. People want to know how many cars you had. People want to know how much you spend on a vacation. These are the things that people click on. They're not going to click on some philosophical article about
mm,
purpose. And so I said, no, I don't want that story. That's when I decided we need to do this without the story. And so we gave it away anonymously, and parts of it went to people I knew, people in my own circle who needed help at the time, and causes that I was a little bit aware of, small causes,
mhm,
little things that were happening in Toronto at the time, people really helping people, kind of grassroots spaces. And the bulk of it, because I felt this all comes down to mental health. If we are
mm,
in the right mental spaces on our journeys, we make those better decisions. And because we're not, and there's so much cloud, and we don't know how to navigate through them so well,
mm,
we fall through all these bad decision makings in our lives. Even if we're getting wealthier, we're just not happier. And so I gave the bulk of it to mental health support, and
mm,
walked away. And for the first 45-ish days, about 6, 7 weeks, I was homeless in Istanbul. I was in Istanbul at this point, and I literally slept in, train stations and just different places at that point. And I met a lot of fascinating people. I understood sharing from such a deeper perspective where um, this one homeless person, hey, Sid, I've never seen you here. You're new. When I said, yes, I'm new. And they said, let's go eat. And I said, I don't have money. And they said, no, no, there's a place that gives us food. And I said, okay. So we go to this place, and he shows them his card. And I was literally tourist at the point, right? So I didn't have any residency permits, nothing. And so the person wouldn't give me food. And this
mm,
person was like, it's okay, it's fine, we'll eat together. And literally shared his food with me. Like, he put the food down, and it's like half and half, let's eat together from one plate.
mm,
And to me, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how many people in the world who have money are willing to share half of what they have to make
mm,
someone else be able to become happy or fed or sustain somebody else.
mhm,
And I had a lot of these moments. And in and around that time, I started reaching out to people about my thoughts of changing and making a difference and reaching a certain point in my life where I could bring about change and I could successfully do that. And I was never scared because I think the history of my successes in education, in work, every time I put my mind and heart into something wholeheartedly, I
Mm-hmm.
succeed. So that being the case, I was never scared of, oh my God, I'm sleeping on a subway bench. It didn't bother me actually, because I always knew I'm going to find my route and I'm going to get there and I'm going to be successful and resilient and it's going to happen. And so, I start working towards making that happen. And from about 2018 to 2020, a lot of writing. I've got about 15 books out now. A lot of writing later, I came up with the idea of compassivist. I started thinking compassion is the essence of our existence. I mean, if there wasn't that natural instinct to have compassion, to have empathy, we no species would survive. Because I just thought about, well, a mother gives birth. The easiest food after birth is the baby. Why not just kill the baby and eat the baby? There's something stopping you. What is stopping you? It's that. It's compassion. It's something that's innate. It's not something that's necessarily learned. It
Mm-hmm.
starts in that innate state of being, to care for that being that grows and not eat it right there as food, right? And so I thought that's where I have to start. I have to start with compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, great. I feel compassion. I'm going to feel compassionate towards everything I see. And I'm going to, think compassion. But if I don't act with compassion, how much of this compassion is actually making a difference if I just
Mm-hmm.
store it inside, if I just selfishly hold it into me? And that's where I thought the action, the activism
Yeah.
is the main focus of the compassion, the
Mm.
outlet of the compassion. And I started looking for a word, in different languages. I speak a few languages. I started thinking in all these languages, can I find a word for, a compassionate activism? And there
Mm.
wasn't. So that's where compassivist came from. I put them together and I thought, compassion and activism, I put compassivist together as a person, compassivist, and it should stop with a T, as compassivist, but I call it compassivist because it has an E at the end. And in many languages, Arabic, French, two of the languages that I grew up speaking and learning, there is the feminine and the masculine. There's gender in
Yeah.
words. A car is la voiture, it's a she. In English, it's just a car. There's no gender to it. And so I thought this movement has to be feminine based, because it comes from that place of compassion. It comes from that place of nurture. It comes from the force within each human that is built on the feminine. And so I put that E at the end of it to always remind myself, everybody, generations to come, that we always have to remember
Mm-hmm.
that aspect of our connection to the world and to the universe.
Mm. I really want to go into what Capacivist East does and what all of the channels that it's broadcasting. But I want to go back because there's so many points in your story that, um, sort of the second part will be Capacivist East. There's so many pieces to unpack there. For listeners, there's the folks who are well resourced who can relate. There are folks who might not feel well resourced who can relate, who feel lost, or um and then there are people who are feeling highly purposeful who can relate, because there's always this evolutionary impulse that is wanting more, and we live in a world of more and more, and we're indoctrinated to want more, and it's never enough. I have this incredible honor to work with two people who've started at something called the Enough Project, Brent Kessel and Robert Bugard, and we facilitate circles with well-resourced people who are exploring this conversation, and it's to be compassionate about, just because you have a ton of money or a ton of resources, that doesn't mean that you are feeling connected to your soul, connected to nature, connected to, right? And that
Mhm.
that scarcity paradigm exists. It exists. It exists in almost all of us, right? Until unless we've done the work to, I say all of us in the modern world, unless we've done the work to dismantle that program within us. And so whether it's money, whether it's love, whether it's education, it could be anything, right? And so I really identify with this, and there are some times where, and this is what I really want to ask you a question about right now. There are times where you might not feel that you have enough, and you actually might not have enough that you actually literally need to support a basic lifestyle or something, right? And you might be struggling with that, and but you have the capacity, and you know you have the capacity to create what you need. And sometimes there's whatever the subconscious programming, we're all navigating our landscape of subconscious programming, couldn't sort of connect the dots because our environment is very, our environment informs our actions. So I wanted to ask you this, when you said that you really trusted and you had that deep sense of I can figure this out. Was there ever any time where you couldn't sort of connect the dots because our environment is very, our environment informs our actions.
Mhm.
And so you went from an environment where you familiar with taking action and now you're in a different environment. And did it ever feel like, how do I get over that hump if you felt stuck? I mean, that's really what this is speaking to. If
Mhm.
anyone who out there who feels stuck, right? And then stuck can has many different tentacles and can form a lot of stories about
Mhm.
ourselves and shame and guilt and all that. And so, yeah, were you ever did you ever feel like stuck and oh no, how am I going to get out of this?
It may sound arrogant, but I'm going to say no. And the
Okay.
reason I'm going to say no is because I don't believe in giving up ever under any circumstances, which is why um, I've written about a lot of topics that I may not even understand. I've written about suicide. I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor who's been exploring that field for so long, but I've written from a very personal perspective of why. No matter what you're going through, just
Yeah.
as a layman person, whatever you're going through, just push. Doesn't matter. Just keep pushing. And then I spoke to people who have been in that situation, who have been doctors, who have been, people who have attempted to, and they come back to me. They're saying almost a similar story. You got to fight through it, and but they're saying it using different words
Yeah.
or different circumstances. But essentially, it's the resilience, and I feel the universe loves me. And I don't know how to explain that, but
Yeah.
it's a true feeling. It's not a fake feeling,
Yeah.
that kind of the fake feeling for me is, you go to the mosque or to the church or you go to a synagogue or a temple or whatever, and the environment, as you say, creates this aura of you are loved because
Yeah.
look how beautiful the church is. Of course you're loved. Light a candle, say a prayer, you're loved. And I don't believe in that. I really don't. But I believe if you can dig really deep inside yourself and feel that there is a force that loves you, you connect to whatever you want to
Mm.
call it. You can call it nature, you can call it God, you can call it by a name of a God you believe in. Doesn't matter what you call it. The point
Mhm.
is you're connecting to something that is actually giving you that love. It's feeding you that love. And if
Mm.
you can hold on to that and push through in your actions, you're getting a source of nourishment through your actions.
Mhm.
That source maintains the reason why I say, no, I never got stuck, because I always believed that I'm purpose to something. And as long as I seek that purpose,
Mm.
I won't be stuck. When I stop seeking that purpose and I just give into the environment, that's when I'm stuck. And so many examples in the world give you that response, whether it's modern, like Nelson
Mhm.
Mandela, whether it's uh, could even be a fable, we don't know, but old stories like Noah, Moses, these are people who didn't give up, who didn't stop.
Mhm.
Noah's looking at the ark like, how am I going to build this, right? And how am I going to
Mhm.
put all these animals in there? But somehow, the story goes, it happened because Noah didn't give up through thick or thin. And so many stories like that. You come to a modern version that you can see or, experience with your own eyes, and you see people like Mandela, and you're like, could I sit through that for 20 years, 20 plus years, and then come back just for a moment to give the country back in this better state and then die? Would that be enough? Well, if you felt that love and if you felt that
Mm-hmm.
purpose and if you understood this is what you're meant to do, then
Mm-hmm.
yes, you absolutely love to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew that you are that person meant for this, then you go through the pain without feeling the pain because you always feel the love of what you're doing over and beyond the pain of what you're receiving. So when I was sitting on a subway bench and I see people going by and I was like, I never said, what the hell did I do? I could have been, sitting at the spa right now. No, I never said that. I said, why am I not receiving the next step? Why am I
Mm-hmm.
sitting here? Why am I, just sitting and I'm not be able to act? What am I missing? And I kept looking into what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
And that search, that internal action within myself was what led me to developing compassion. I didn't create it. Compassion has been around long before I was born, will be around long after I'm born. Same thing with activism. I didn't create anything, but I took the perfect forms, as Plato calls it, and I found the closest version of that perfection in my understanding and try to bring that as a force, as a momentum, and lead that momentum into the world and say, hey, people, this is the momentum I'm bringing. I think we could do good things with this momentum. So that's why I say no, because I don't
Mm,
believe in that. I don't
I love
believe
that.
in people saying, I can't. That's the
Mm-hmm.
no. That's where you feel like, when was the time you were stuck? The time I said I can't. But
Mm-hmm.
if you never say I can't, you're always in motion. The universe is always in motion. There's no moment where planet Earth says, I'm tired, I'm going to take a break, I'm not going to continue my. No, this is what you're designed to do. We're not designed to break. We're not designed to say we cannot. The we cannot end point should be, maybe you die in your trial. Maybe, you don't make it, but that's the movement. That's the momentum that you went through. That's how you burnt out on the
Yeah.
high. And that's how I want my life to be. So I'll never say no.
Mm. I love that. A teacher of mine once said, and this ought to be the instead of the Rumi quote in the waiting room, it ought to be "Can't lives on Won't Street," And
Yes.
I really love what you're saying. This is the pinnacle of my own practice and what I work with clients. It's my what is when you don't know purpose, when it doesn't feel like you have a purpose, it's what's my purpose today? Because today we all have a purpose. And
Mhm.
and I think that so many times any stuckness is really coming from a projection from the outside world, is our belief that we are supposed to fit into these identities and these boxes and the way the outside world works, which is really just a tiny fraction of our perceptual bandwidth of possibilities,
Mhm.
right? And we're either buying in and colluding with that story. And if we don't feel like we fit, or there doesn't feel like there's that
Right.
belonging, it's not that we don't fit. It's that the very fact that we are alive. And I love how you framed your truth, because I could feel the authenticity of what you just said for you, as that love is um guiding, and love is feeding and
Mhm.
supporting you at all times. So beautiful.
And it takes the fear
Mhm.
out of everything. That
Mhm.
is the beauty of it. There have been times throughout this journey, the last few years, I kid you not when I tell you, I didn't know how I was going to pay the following month. I had absolutely no clue, but I pushed through. And there are people on the team telling me, Ali, we we literally have, for example, $8 and our bills are $14. What are we going to do? Should we take side jobs? Like, should we just go out and work for a month and come back and continue? No, the universe purposed me to this because I know I'm on the right track now in my life. All these
Mhm.
experiences I've had, all the education, all the experiences of the last 40 years of my life from birth till now, everything now makes absolute sense. The
Mhm.
languages I've learned, the places I've grown up, the religions I learned and experienced growing up, the relationships I've had, the actual courses that I took. I grew up in a household that was Muslim, but I had a mom. My mom, she's very practicing, like by the book Muslim. My dad was a mystic. He was like very spiritual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but he wasn't adhering to the rules of the clergy, so to speak. And as I grew up with these two. I went to school in Europe, and the school I went to was Catholic, but we like back in Dubai at that point, they didn't know, it didn't matter. So I learned the Catholic faith going to school because I had to follow the rules and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Then I go to university. I go to this school called York University in Toronto. And in the fields that I'm in economics, there's a big Jewish community in that school. And so a lot of my friends become Jewish. And then I had to learn things about Shabbat and other things that I had no clue because I've never lived or met Jewish people before. So all these experiences grow and grow and grow. And in one of my classes, out of the blue, I get thrown into Spinoza because I had to do a research paper and my professor was writing a book, and so Spinoza got tied to Sufism in that, in my thesis, basically, for that graduate program in philosophy. And it opened up a world that I'm using today. It's from Spinoza. It's
Mm-hmm.
not from anywhere else that I understand the world is one. It's from
Mm-hmm.
understanding that philosophy that I understand the world is one. So when I built Compassivist as this space where we're all one in, it comes from that history. So now, when I said earlier, lost years, I meant them as in, I wish I could have activated myself earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
not lost in the sense that they literally went into the trash can, but because all of those experiences became tools that I didn't know what they were for.
Yeah.
Had I known this is what I wanted, this is the most important lesson I think we can take in life is we need to figure out what our tool set and toolbox is as soon as possible, because you're here for a purpose, right? And if you open the bag of your purpose and there's flippers and a pair of goggles in it, and you're wearing them to go working in New York as a courier, you're not going to be doing very well because those flippers are not going to let you walk fast enough, and the goggles, it just doesn't work. You have to figure out you need to do something in the water. That's what the flippers are going to help you with. So
Yeah.
if you're purposing it as courier on a bicycle or running in New York City, you're not going to get anywhere with that purpose. You're not purposed to do that job. You're purposed to do something in the ocean. You're going to find something. You're going to help the world with those flippers that were given to you by the universe. I was given all these tools that I put in the safety deposit box while I was running around doing all sorts of things that I had no business doing. So
Mm.
now I know what my tools are. I'm like, oh, this does this, this does this. So now I have no fear because I know these tools always will lead us forward.
Yeah. So, and the courier who is, whatever he's doing now that's not in the ocean is probably gaining some skill that he'll use, he or she will use there. And I think that that's a really great point. I also had an interesting journey, like in and out of, wait, what are you doing? When I already knew my purpose and it felt like such a divergent, path.
Mhm.
And I look back and everything makes sense. I just actually did a talk on this, and I think it's like you said, it's the wisdom to cull the nuggets and use them. I say use them as your medicine. And like
Mhm.
what I want to now really learn about Compassivist and what you do and what is the mission. And also, yeah, how are the tools that you might, if it in that period that one might say was lost or wasted, what are the tools that are enabling this amazing mission?
So I put the word together and I said, this is what we need to do. We really need to act now because I also feel that the amount of awareness and the amount of education out there present, not the amount of education people hold, but the amount of education that's present online today and accessible online today to the majority of the world is sufficient. We're not in a stage where we're at these dark ages. We have no clue what's happening. We have enough information about a lot of things, whether it's our food, whether it's environmental issues. We just have enough information. What we lack is taking that information and acting with it
Yeah.
to the benefit of our future. And that's the space I want to come into. I don't want to be the person who becomes person number 1 million something who has an Instagram page that tells you what chemicals are bad for you in your food. You should not eat. When you go to a supermarket, look at those. There are enough pages of those, right? So we have sufficient education. What we don't have sufficient, sufficiency in is, if these things are bad for us, why are they on the shelf?
Yeah.
And you think, and then if you really take it further, it's not the company's fault. It's not the government's fault. It's my fault, because
Yeah.
I buy the can of Coke.
Yeah.
If I stop buying the can of Coke, Coke will have to think of what to sell that I will buy.
Yep.
Right? So I start looking at things from that point. I said, I don't like this rhetoric or narrative about Nestle's a bad company. They make plastic. No, I'm the bad person who has forced Nestle's birth because I asked for the cheapest possible, kind of position to buy my water in, and the most disposable, easiest way to do it. And so this company geniusly came up with, hey, I'll sell it to you in a plastic bottle. You could throw it around, do whatever you want. When you're done, just throw it. Don't care about it. Well, if I was more responsible in my choices and use that education to understand how I want to receive my water, Nestle would have never gotten into that trade of making plastic bottles. So I can't blame them. I have to blame me. But me as one person switching makes two problems. One, it's not powerful enough as one person to impact Nestle's thought process. Two, I may be wealthy enough to switch to a bottled water in glass, or receive my water in a certain way that is, helpful to the environment, and I get really good quality, good sourced water, clean water, so to speak. What about all the rest of the world who can't afford that? They can't afford the switch. You go to Walmart and you get a box of 24 plastic bottle for 99 cents, and then you one glass bottle that's 500 milliliters for $3. Well, nobody's buying that. It's the 1% that are buying that, and they don't make that much impact when it comes to this product. So the action part becomes what? Becomes telling people, let's build a collective that makes that switch, so that we can tell these companies, hey, we're sorry we put you in this position to create the plastic in the first place, but now we've learned our lessons. We've realized that we made the wrong choices as consumers. We're going to make these better choices.
How do you do that? How does
Exactly. So I'll tell you, and the second part is subsidizing the costs of this so that the grander scale of a population can afford to have the healthier stuff. Because there is no growth. To me, economic growth is not when we can make water where the 1% wealthiest people in the most developed countries only have access to this water.
Yeah.
Growth is when even the animals were saying, hey, this is the better quality water because we all live together on this one planet. You need to have this too. You shouldn't be drinking out of that toxic river and then your eye falling out and you're in the wild. You don't know what to do as an animal, and nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? So how does Compasivist do this? We have many tentacles. So we have different programs. And I rely heavily on the arts because I believe everything starts with expression. Compassion comes from your expression, right? When you turn compassion into action, you're expressing. So whether it's literature, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's activism, and by activism, I do not mean holding placards and standing out in the middle of the streets. I mean, actually with leadership. If you do that, that's fine, but you need leadership that guides it somewhere. That we've had so much activism in the last decade without leadership. And that really got me to the point of saying, this is perfect. We're in the perfect zone right now, because what we're going to do is we're going to bring change. So when people come out of their spaces and they support us and they join us and they become part of Compasivist, whether it's through their money or whether it's through their actual body being involved with us, they're going to see change. When they start seeing change, they will continue that path with us because they know we're onto something. One of the reasons why BLM was not successful was because, here you have an organization, tragic event, George Floyd, everybody came out, and they supported, and they went, they did the walks, they did everything, and the country was upside down. And what happens? Nothing. No policy changes. Nothing, tangible happens. Then you get some more tragic events. Some more people die at the hands of police brutality. Some more racism at the hands of the police, systemic racism. But nobody's coming out anymore. There's no walks. There's no riots. There's nothing. And why is that happening? Because the leadership sizzled, right?
Yeah. So how is it?
We need leadership.
How does it look in capacities like?
Oh, in capacities, we have capacities publishing, capacities
Mhm.
dialogues, label your carbon, language of emotion, which, and I'll go into them briefly, and a few others. So in capacities publishing, for example, we're taking the active, somewhat pioneering move of doing many things differently. One, we bring in authors who want to tell a story that matters. A story that people can resonate with, a story that they can help people activate and understand purpose and find what they want to do with their lives and how they want to engage in that space of their life. And we leave our authors the rights to their art, to their expression. We don't own that. We don't capitalize on it. And we don't print. The reason we don't print books is not only because of the 89% of all paper that is out there is illegally logged, not because of that only, but because when you go into a bookstore and you buy a book and you ask anybody in that bookstore, working in that bookstore, can you tell me where this book was glued?
Yeah.
They won't be able to. And there are tons of kids in Bangladesh who are sitting there with no gloves, nothing, with their finger gluing the books that you are reading, that you're buying your children. And these are kids there who lose, skin on their fingers because you want to read books cheaply. And so there's so many social issues that are happening because of the printed book and the libraries, all these huge libraries we have, and the the environmental impact of these, whereas these can be repurposed to homelessness, for example. Just as an example, these can be reconfigured into homes, and they can be used that way instead of stories of books. And so many industries have moved to digital. Music, nothing happened when we moved from vinyl and CD and all that and cassette to digital, to Spotify and Apple Music, and all. Nothing happened. There was no quality drop. It actually opened up the music world. There's more decentralization in the process, right? So we're doing this to kind of pioneer and tell people, hey, does the court system really need 3 copies of thousands of pages to give to the lawyer and the district attorney and to this office and that office? Can it just not be emailed? Like, come on. Let's get real about that, right? So, or my bank statement, can it not stop being paper? I mean, you're deteriorating the world for something that's redundant. And so that's one side of it, right? So we're trying to push this so that people start understanding why we're doing this, right? Why we're, and maybe people start thinking, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be that person who receives my bank statement in the mail. I want to make that difference. And then goes deeper and says, hey, wait a minute. What does my bank do with my money that I deposit in their account? These are conversations that open up. Whoa, they're financing Aramco. Oh, I don't want to be part of that. I'm taking my money out. I'm putting it in a green bank that finances good projects, not HSBC. It's the number one funder of all the disasters as a bank. It's important to say those things, right?
Of course
That's
it is.
That's one place. Then you go into the carbon labeling program. We've designed a system where right now you don't have this mass carbon labeling on products. To get to the nutritional privilege that we have today, you walk into a supermarket today or a market, wherever, you pick up any product, you flip it over, and there's this whole nutritional information about it. This doesn't happen overnight. Our grandparents used to go to the market, pick something up. They had no clue what's inside there. It just says tomato paste. They don't really know what's inside there, and they could get sick from it. They could have allergies or whatever, but they didn't know. Now we have this nutritional information. We don't have the carbon information. We're going out there, we're rioting, we're protesting, we're talking about being greener, we're fighting all these things. We're following these amazing radical people like Greta Thunberg and others who are championing this. But there's no actual policy change. So in a sense,
I actually want to, I want to jump in. I want to jump in here. This is like the lifeblood of my my entire journey. And I have to say, I love what you're doing. And I think it is part when you're talking about the Instagram pages, for example, just, as educational, because it is what you're saying, and the way that you're acting is an expression of education, right? It's like we're going to take these actions as a form of education on these issues. I actually, I agree with you, and I'll just say I agree with you, and I think that the carbon labeling, like, can we just dialogue about this for a minute? Because what you think about this. Um, in my experience, witnessing, like, I was a tree sitter, an environmental
I know.
activist, right, from like 30 years ago. And so
Mhm.
I've been kind of watching the wake up of the planet, of humanity, where these
Yes.
conversations, like, I was a crazy person,
You
right?
lived in a tree when people were not talking about environmentalism to save a tree,
But we
you know?
to save more than the trees, big, like, we protected
Yeah,
a lot of trees. But
I know.
the reason why I'm saying that is there was very little awareness, and it
Mhm.
was like you had to fight to wake people up about little things. What we see now is the perpetuation, like, a lot of the narrative. There's a narrative around climate change.
Mhm.
And what I witness, I'm watching how is this narrative where now, first we were environmentalists. I know that your Compassive East actually mentions the environment. Everyone is using words like carbon and sustainability and regenerate, like words that are so big that,
Mhm.
that there's this effect of psychic numbing. It's like, well, I don't know how am I going to turn the switch on the climate, right? But I think even carbon metrics and carbon labeling, um, I, I don't know that people really like from a systems change perspective, a
Mhm.
systemic change can happen from that point. It's like, how does an individual read a carbon label and make a different choice? Is it shaming? Is there some other form of awareness that around the systemic the story, because it's not even just carbon in the atmosphere. Like,
Right.
if you really want to solve the issue, it's Mother Earth is shriveling up because we're taking her
Yes.
organs out. Like,
Yes.
let's go to the heart of it. And
Okay.
yeah,
Give me 2 minutes to explain exactly how um, I can answer that completely. So going back to the carbon label issue, when we bring the carbon labeling program with the right amount of funding and with the right amount of doors opening in a sense,
mm,
um, imagine this: you have Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. That both companies have agreed to put the carbon, your little carbon label on their product. Coke has 3.2 grams of carbon to make this can for you. Pepsi has 2.6. What do you think is happening in the market now? A lot of R&D at Coke is going to go into beating that 2.6 because that's what capitalism's about. Capitalism's not about innovation for the betterment of the world today. That's what it was built as in the
yeah,
1800s, but it became innovation to advance my personal gain as a corporation or a person in
mhm,
that competitive world. But
yep,
now you throw that back at them and you say, hey, more people are buying Pepsi. They don't understand what 2.6 means. They don't understand what 3.4 means. They only understand that this is less than this, thus it's better. I'm going to start with that metric and I'm going to allow people to make the choice of what's better. They're going to start buying the what's better. And that other company is going to start to compete in the space of carbon numbers. That competition is going to naturally reduce the destruction because every other company has to play that same game, whether
yes.
it's
So,
right. So that's part one.
but with part one, I want to,
Right. Sure.
'cause there's always like the unintended consequences chapter in
Mhm.
my book, that on the unintended consequences of I'm not disagreeing that this is a great idea or needed or would, instigate change. I'm pushing buttons because there's electric vehicles were
Mhm.
were the godsend solution, but nobody was asking
No.
about where the minerals were coming from. And I was like saying this, and I'm a crazy person, but we know that now. I mean, it's a means to an end, right? So how do we bypass unintended consequences? So maybe Pepsi
Mhm.
has a lower carbon footprint, yet has a higher something else footprint to get that lower
Yes.
footprint. And there's an unintended consequence where it's a metric that's not being recorded.
Right. But let me ask you this. going back to Tesla, if Tesla didn't exist, would this conversation happen right now in the world where people want more public transportation, where people are more aware, where people are sitting there and saying, because I used to say this too when Tesla came out, I said, wait a minute, you're using the same tires as my car. You're using the same windows as my car. You're using the same leather as my car. You're using the same plastics. The only thing that's different is I put gas in there. You have an electric bank in there, and that electric bank comes from another region of the world that you're destroying to get that from. Just like you destroyed the Middle East to get oil from it, now you're destroying parts of Africa to get this from this resource for people to drive Tesla and feel good about themselves. That's horrible, but really good marketing. Hats off to you for your marketing. But then I think to myself, had this transitionary period not come across for people to become aware that we need to start looking for better ways to drive, right? Would we have ever moved from diesel? No, because the greatest engineers at Porsche were not thinking of doing electric. They knew about it, they just weren't thinking about it. Why? Money supersedes the purpose. So we have to break away from the control of money. And the way you break away from the control of money is you throw in a shock. Tesla is the shock to the industry. And so now everybody's not looking to become the better electric maker. No, people are starting to go one step further to say, how do we get to true solar? How do we reduce the impact? Some people are not even going into the industry in that way. They're saying, hey, you know what? Instead of spending $2 billion doing this, we spent $2 billion putting in more train tracks or, some kind of a solar moving public system that can help people get from point A to point B without the damages. And so these conversations start to happen because the revolution was ignited by Tesla. So Tesla's that original person, who comes close to the palace and throws an apple at the king. And because he threw an apple, they hang him and the person dies. But it was that guy's apple.
You're talking about the original Tesla, right?
Yes,
Nikola.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And because of Nikola Tesla, now, we have the car company Tesla that took 100 years to kind of bring in the conversation full circle and then turn around and say, this is bad. And then now we know it's all bad. Now we understand that when we choose to sit on our cars and drive around for no reason with coffee and chit chat and enjoying the scenery as we drive around, that's a bad activity. We didn't know this before because nobody cared. But now we know this. So it's a transitionary period. And there's all this violence that goes on in transitionary periods because go back to the 1700s, or even today, the Arab Spring, it all started with one fruit seller who said, I've had it. This is bad, but by myself, I can't go change the government. What am I going to do? I'm going to put myself on fire. And people are going to see that. They're going to resonate with what I just did. They're going to topple the oppression. And so one oppression, another oppression, people that you couldn't even imagine, the heights of power like Gaddafi, and the power in Egypt, Hosni Mubarak and those people toppled. You couldn't even imagine it. And toppled by one little person who decided to put himself on fire. Well, that was the ignition to the revolution. So we have igniting moments to the revolution. I think the ignition here is you put the carbon labeling out, not as a solution, but as an initiator for people to say, hey, just like with the nutrition labels, did it change anything? No. They're making more garbage and more chemical foods now than they were when nutrition labels first came out.
Yeah.
So it didn't really help the situation, but at least it made us aware that we are consuming plastics. We're consuming one credit card a week, I read recently or something like that, the equivalent of. So we're consuming these willingly because we're not fighting it. I think what I'm trying to do with the programs is to bring the education where you can make the changes that collectively affect the industry. So parallel to labeling, I have a TV program where we're pitching and we're trying to get into talks with some groups. Imagine you've seen all these TV shows where you flip homes. You buy a home for 200,000, you change the floors and the kitchen counter, and all of a sudden you sell it for 330,000, and now everybody wants to do that, right? So, and it became a big thing. It started moving. The purpose wasn't for you to watch a show. The purpose was to get you out there becoming a customer so agents can start, the market moves, right? That was the real purpose of these shows. So I thought, Imagine we have a show where we bring in the average home, let's just say New York City. We bring in the average home in Long Island. And we use that home as the base. We bring in 3 contestants. Each contestant has a certain amount of time and a budget, the same budget, to make the most environmental
I love
upgrades
that.
to the home.
Yeah.
And then once they're done, we run each model on 24 hours and we see what the environmental footprint of that house is now. The
Nice.
person who reduced it the most within that budget wins. Now, you bring in a bank, a green bank, who doesn't have that many clients, right? It's struggling because the big banks just eat them all the time. And you bring in someone like Home Depot, who's a giant in the industry, and you say, hey, let's create a green area in your store and sponsor this show. And now it was only $5,000, and now his bill is $100 less a month. Never mind the
Yeah.
environmental impact, because I don't really get that yet as a
Yeah.
consumer. But
I
the
love
bill
it.
is $100 less a month, right?
Mm.
Guess what? You do this around the country and you get these big sponsors to kind of come in. And the bank, why the bank? Because the bank can provide a line of credit. It can subsidize this line of credit as an environmental issue. The state is going to sponsor it. They're going to subsidize it. The interest rate is going to be really low and it's against your house. So it's the least risk product that they sell, because banks only sell money, but in different packages, right? At different rates because of the risk value. And so you bring those sponsors in together, you're creating an economy that is benefiting the future of your country. Now, imagine this: the entire recycling issue, the entire garbage issue is about 4.8 to 5% of the entire environmental problem. Guess what energy is at? It's at 77% of the entire problem. So do the math. If I were to give you a solution to have no more garbage, like you just zap and there's no garbage all of a sudden, right? All landfills are finished, garbage is gone. You're fixing at most 5% of the entire problem. If I can reduce with my show 10% of a nation's energy consumption, what am I doing? I'm doing about 7%, 7.7%. Which one's higher, 10% here or the entire thing there? And over here, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just asking for one channel, one Hulu, Netflix, somebody, and one Home Depot to come and say, yes, we love this. Let's do this, right? You do that, you have a program, you have a show, people are watching it, people are excited about it, people are making the changes in their homes using these knowledgeable systems. So this is the carbon edge of what we do. We bring in those ideas that can make the difference.
So let me ask you, what is the status of that, and how can listeners let that? I love it. I want
The
to
status of that is, the status of this is, and I put my ideas out in the world because I want people to connect and say, hey, you know what? I just heard about this. I'm a director here. Come here, let's talk. Or I just heard about this. I'm the, environmental VP of Home Depot, and hi, that's how it goes. And so I put it out there. The status is everything is ready. We actually even have a network willing to consider the show. We just haven't been able to get the correct sponsorship, and we've gotten sponsorships that I don't want, but we don't have the correct sponsor, because without the hardware people and without the bank, you really are not I'll make the show. I'll be able to make the show. Doesn't matter who sponsors. Nike can sponsor me. I'll make the show. But my purpose is not making the show to make money. My purpose is I need those two groups, because the goal is that those two groups will then feed the entire market so that we can reduce 10, 20, 30% of the energy crisis that we're going through. And I'm not asking the government to change laws. I'm not pressuring people into anything. I'm doing this with people's willingness, because they'll be like, this is awesome. I save money. I'm doing good in the world. What can go wrong?
Okay, well, this is happening. So we are all in support. I am in support of this, and however I can help in whatever way. And I'm so glad that we have. I mean, I know you're doing a lot more also, and I will direct people. We could talk all day. I want to keep going. I want to keep going, but I want to also honor your time and make sure we will have all of the links where people can find out all of the other work. I know that Compassavis, you also have a foundation, right? Like you're supporting
we have
direct
a
action.
Foundation. Yes, we're supporting. Again, over there, we're supporting causes, and those causes, again, are not specifically to support the cause itself only, because I'm also not a believer in the fact that you could just throw money at problems and it goes away. Okay,
Mm.
there needs to be some involvement. So these causes are designed and selected specifically because as they grow, they can become national, regional, and international to fight the root cause of why this problem exists. You know, if you're
Mhm.
supporting domestic violence and women and children involved in these kind of situations, just paying for each person who goes through domestic violence to get a lawyer and get out of it is not stopping the domestic violence. You're just affording them more lawyers to be able to go through the court system.
Mhm.
So, we want to get to the prevention state. So we're involved with causes in a sense to get to that root cause and to
Mm.
make those systemic changes with them, not just support them. So
Mm.
that's another place where we are. And to
Beautiful.
wrap this up, with Compassive Ease, the biggest thing we're going to do is we're planning on the world's first compassion convention. It's never been done before.
What does that look like?
So it's going to be a space where we're going to have a film fest, a music fest, a literary fest, a speaking space, and a traditional trade show where all people come there to sell compassion, essentially. And when I say sell, I don't mean dollars. I mean, people come there and say, hey, this is what I do. I'm helping here at this shelter. I'm doing that over there. Get involved with me in a place where they can all meet. Because other than a few huge nonprofits, nobody has the marketing power and dollars to be in your face all the time and to be recognized. It takes a lot to be seen. And a lot of these nonprofits are doing amazing work, never get seen because,
Mm.
nobody knows about that one lady in Colombia who's helping 350 orphans or kids who are abused and stuff, go through life. But everybody's hearing about this massive organization who's using the same pictures of kids in Africa for the last 15 years, trying to earn money out of them, giving 10 cents on the dollar to the cause. So we need to change that hypocrisy in there too, and that fraud in there too. And we need to fight all of those things. So the Compassive Convention, essentially what it will do is in the film fest, we're aiming to help people in the arts grow in the sense of make a film that has social value, that has social impact in it. Do not put your budgets in making, for example, Fast and the Furious 14. It's not going anywhere. But
Mm.
let's make this film instead, right? So we're
Mhm.
promoting these artists. In the music, we're promoting good music and the cause. You see all these huge concerts going on that are generating revenues of $500 million to $1 billion.
Yeah.
You don't see one banner of support for anything in their organizations. And you think back to, when
Sometimes, I mean,
Live Aid,
I'm with
not
you
always,
I'm with you on that. There
not
are a
every
few
single
of
one.
those artists
Yeah,
that, yeah, yeah.
I'm talking the giant artists of the world.
Mhm.
They're not really pouring their
There's such
hearts
an
out into the
yeah,
things
there's an
to do.
opportunity for
Yes,
sure,
and
yeah.
so when you think about Live Aid or when you think about Heal the World and these programs that
Mm.
happened, these artists came together, giving their best at
Yeah.
these concerts so that millions of dollars can be raised for a cause.
Yep.
When you think of Bono from YouTube, this person dedicated his life alongside his music
Yeah.
to doing things. They're doing things. How many artists out there with these kind of platforms, with these million and 10 million and 50 million followers are directing people, are leadership models? We don't have that. We're lacking leadership role models, right? These are
Mm.
people who can all be leadership role models. And so the convention in the literary genre with writers, with musicians, having that festival, having the film fest where people can come and see these impactful films, the speakers area where, you can listen to real leaders that will change you when you leave this convention. The idea is you come in here, there's a whole lot of love. You pick the love that resonates with you and you
Mhm.
stick with it. And then the
Mm.
world grows in compassion that way.
Mm. I love it. Where is this going to be located, based?
Well, the idea is because we always think globally is to do it like the Olympics, a different country every year,
Oh, I love
where we
it.
pick a
Mhm.
city, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, Rome and Paris all the time. It could be Cairo and other places as well. You could go to Senegal as well. You could bring love
Yeah.
and activate those things in many parts of the world. You can go to South America and so many places, Yemen too. But the thing is, we're going to start in Vegas because that is the convention space of the United States, and we kind of are starting our movement in the United States solely because at this moment in the history of our world, in this moment in our world, the United States happens to be the most giving country. The people in the United States are very ready to support and to be engaged with something that will bring change, which is why your political system is where it is. It's so contentious because people really want to express, people really want to be a part of what's going on, people want to be engaged, and especially the younger generation. In my generation, an authority said sit down, you sat down. In this generation, an authority says sit down, they don't sit down, they say why. They're ready to fight, they're ready to throw away their Columbia degree and sit there in encampments for a cause they believe in, whatever that may be. I'm not arguing the cause, I'm just saying they do what they believe in. It takes me back to, I wasn't there, but I see the history, the 60s, the Vietnam War and Muhammad Ali, that kind of stuff is happening again. And it's really picking up in the US, where people have the privilege also to be a part of those things. So we're starting out there.
And there's the Mother Earth, this planet in the solar system is evolving herself as we're evolving in our consciousness. There's a massive consciousness shift since 30 years ago. I'll tell
yes,
as somebody who
thank you for saying that.
There was no one was talking environment, right? It's just the fact. So even though I push back on carbon credits or carbon, labeling.
Well, I'm against carbon credits too. So don't put those two in the same boat.
I won't lump those together. Cancel, clear, delete. But I push back on a lot of solutions that I hear, not saying that they're bad. It's just like, where can we bypass the middle step? Because I do believe humanity.
Where can we bypass the capitalism? That's what I say.
I don't know. I mean, like, capitalism is a form of currency and it's going through its own evolution. Humans are facilitating that. But I think that even our solutions, where can we bypass what we believe is that middle step? Like possibly, right? We don't always have to, but I'm just saying, what if we can have faith in this evolutionary leap we are in right now? And that, we are going to make an evolutionary leap. This earth is making an evolutionary leap.
Yes.
And we're either, I was just visiting the Kogi people in December, an indigenous and their mamos are their shamans, their spiritual leaders. And like I was there years ago, I asked the very same question and I asked it again this time. What is your vision for the future? While we were like in a ceremonial state at a fire, and the answer involved, if there is not an evolutionary leap in awakening right now, which is happening, but we need like a jump. It's human extinction in 15 years. And I don't think we're going to just implode. There's a lot of ways you can decode what that means, though. Think in terms of just like fractal time and the evolution of this planet with floods and just environmental events that could be the end of us. It's not necessarily our fault. So I do believe part of this, a big part, and I love compassion is an ingredient for sure, right? Compassion feels like it's like a key to open up consciousness, right? Because it can, once you're in that space of love and
but see, you use the word open up, which is an action. So that's why it's important to bring the word compassivist into context. Because compassion alone doesn't open a key. Compassion is not an active verb.
Why isn't being enough?
It's not, because right now, in the moment that we're in, if I say I don't know how to swim and we're standing by a cliff and I fall into the water, without you taking the action of saving me, I drown and I die. You can have all the compassion in the world for me, saying, oh my God, Ali fell there, he's going to drown, he doesn't know how to swim. I feel so bad. That is compassion. It's maximum compassion. But without actually activating your compassion, saying, I need to save him no matter what happens. I could drown too, but I have to save him. That activity of you taking that plunge into the water as well, that is the difference where compassion becomes activated and resolves the problem of Ali dying. Ali dying does not get resolved with compassion. So being is not enough. We need to activate our being. And that is where I come in.
I love that.
That is where compassivist comes in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not disagreeing. I think being and doing is both important, right? So in order to
have to start with being. I have to start with understanding that an animal that I'm eating at the table suffered for me to eat this animal's meat. So that's the being of me understanding that. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to say, I can't think of these things. It'll make my life miserable. Dig into
Yes.
my steak. That's one option. Second option is, I'm not going to be involved with this. I'm going to take action against this. That is where your compassion comes into compassivist.
Yes.
You know, the compassion and the action come together and you become a compassivist. So you become vegan, not because of health reasons. No, it's simple. You become a vegan because you're protesting. You're activating your compassion. You're protesting animal farming in that way.
Mm.
You see,
Yeah.
that protest, you did
Yes.
this. You did this 30 years ago. When you went to save trees in a forest, you activated your compassion. You felt bad at first. You said, no, I can't believe they're doing this. They're going to bulldoze these trees. No, I'm going to do something about it. If you had sat at home and watched it and cried as they were doing it and they were filming it on TV and showing it, you would have not activated your compassion, which means those trees would have gone. There would have been a subdivision there now. But because you went and activated your compassion, you
Yes.
became a compassivist by nature 30 years before I could even think of that word.
Yes.
You see, that's why I say I never created it. It's in us. We just need
Yes.
to activate our linguistical terms to match what the universe is feeding us. And the universe is saying, get up, act.
Get up and
Get up,
act.
act. Yes, literally, get up and act with compassion. And
Yeah.
you know, everything we built up to here is that. Get
And
educated, have compassion, understand yourself. You know, we need people like you because I've followed what you're doing, you know, and yes, and you're not the only one, which is the beautiful part of it. You see it propping up in different parts of the world, you know, and there's so many people trying to bring us into understanding the higher consciousness, to bring us to understand ourselves, to bring us to understand that being, you know, and whether you go into Buddha 3,000 years ago to today, whatever it may be, wherever you find it, we are coming into that. Now, that's stage one. Stage two is, what are you going to do with what you learned? What are you going to do? You've learned
yes.
this amazing skill set. What are you just going to sit at home with it and watch TV? You're going to watch, you know, the finals of the NBA and just leave that compassion sitting next to your popcorn bucket and die there? No, you need to get up and do something with it.
Well, I want to also say, yes, I agree. And there's a lot of yes ands in this conversation because I'm 100% on the same page as you. Activism has a lot of different energies and frequencies. You have,
Yes.
and I left, like the hardcore sort of like
Mhm.
when I was younger, I was very angry in my activism and it
Mhm.
needed to happen at that time. It fueled what I was doing. I didn't really know another way. And yet I reached a point where I was like, I don't want to fight anymore. I was a lawyer. I don't want to fight anymore. That's not the frequency of creation, love, and solutions. Maybe that's needed over there, but that's not what I need. Right. And
Mhm.
so I want to just say that there's getting up and acting could also just be asking it being it while we need action, we also, like you said, those bridge actions where we are waking people up. So electric cars
Mhm.
from diesel, for example, right? The in
Mhm.
between, the transition, it's okay because the last thing I want is for people to feel guilty because there's a lot of guilt and shame
Mhm.
in frequencies in I'm not doing enough. There's that enough and word
Yes.
again. And so it's being compassionate with yourself, loving yourself,
Yes.
and even being in the inquiry of what can I do? What is my purpose? And another action is to say, you know what? I don't know. Maybe I need to ask for help
Mhm.
in guiding me on my next steps. That's an action. And it's a compassionate action that you can take for
Yes.
yourself as well.
And I always use this quote. It's by Dan Millman from a character called Socrates. And Socrates says,
Mhm.
not the philosopher, but the Dan Millman Socrates says, the secret to
The warrior of the
change,
light, right?
yeah, the secret of change is
Yeah.
to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So
Yeah.
that stage of activism where you're fighting, you know, you're standing outside the G20 or G7 or whatever, and there's these, you know, police guards and everything, and you're rioting out there and you're yelling at the presidents and prime ministers as they're going in and stuff. That's one stage of activism. But when you surpass that stage and you surpass the anger and you think to yourself, okay, me venting is not really doing that much. Now I need to find a solution. I need to find a way to regain this democracy, to regain this power, to make the world a better place. That's when you stop fighting. That's when you say, you can have this. You can have this. You can have the chemical food, eat it, or here you go. I've
Mm,
created this delicious, amazing, organic, whole food meal for us that is healthy. We can
mm,
eat this. I think if we focus here, more people, because we have somewhat of an education today, more people are going to come here at our table and they're going to join us for the meal. And that's one of the programs actually that we have as well, the Capacity's Kitchen, but we won't get into that. So,
mm,
that's the thing. We need to start looking to the new. We need to start building the new. And that's how we evolved socially, right? I mean, the social evolution of civilizations, it went through those nasty spaces to reach the idea of democracy, to reach the idea of togetherness, collectives, and co-ops, and all these social programs and everything else. But at first, it wasn't like that. At first, it was, I am king,
mm.
and you shall all, kiss the ring.
And yeah, and we are, we need to, but we
Yes,
actually are there. The change
yes,
is
we are.
happening. And even if it's not, it's being in the we are, right?
Oh,
Because
it
it's
is. It
happening.
is.
And I
Yes.
love the work you're doing. I'm so grateful that to now share you with my community. And why don't you tell people where they can find you? We'll have all your links in the show notes.
Okay.
And yeah,
Um,
what is
we,
an impact ask that you have from the audience?
oh, from the audience, let me ask first and then I'll share. So ask is two things. We need people to contribute. So you see the conversation we just had? If we had this off of this show and you came and you said, I'm going to contribute to what you're doing. I'm going to have these discussions with you, right? Or arguments even with you, so that we can perfect the way the models are being built, right? So talking about one of the things we brought up, the publishing house, for example, you come and say, well, I used to work in the publishing company for 20 years. You're doing it. The ideas are right, but here's where you need to improve, or here's how it needs to be designed.
Mm,
Great. Bring that knowledge to us because we need that to grow. I'm just passionate. I'm not all of those, we have 12 programs. I'm not, I haven't worked in all those 12 spaces, but I'm
mm,
not scared. I'm not scared. I know the universe purposed me to this work, so I'm doing it. But I know people will join in that way. So that's one ask. The second
mhm,
ask is to be able to create this movement and to be able to push it forward. There is a component of transaction, and transaction today is done through currency. It's not done through barter. It's not done through gold or anything. It's done through the dollar. And so we need the momentum of that, conductivity of the transaction to be able to move forward. So we need people to come in and say, you know what? I want to know more about your work, and whether I have $20 and I want to give $5 of that to you, or whether I'm thinking of giving away $20 million and I think it would do much better here than there, or there,
mm.
get in touch with us. So those are the two asks that we have. Now, we're very lucky that compacivist is such a unique word that we didn't have to fight for all the handles in the spaces. So it's all at compacivist on all social media. And the website, we have a hub, which is called compacivist.com, within which Compacivist Foundation, publishing, all of those, you can kind of click and find your way around and journey through the whole thing. So again, very simple, Compacivist, you type in Compacivist, everything will show up
Mm,
because it's such a unique word that it's easy for people to remember, but you just need to remember the word Compacivist.
beautiful. And we'll do our best to help spread that word compasivist. So yeah, intellectual capital, financial capital, and look at compasivist with a capital C.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm really happy that we're connected. And I look forward to, being in this journey together and sharing your work. So want to thank everybody for being with us today, and for taking action on aligning with purpose and aligning with love and aligning with compassion in action.